I never thought a Thanksgiving dinner could cost me more than my entire college tuition, but here I was, sipping my cappuccino, staring at the bank notification blinking on my phone. $38,141 spent. On them. On family. And Dad had disowned me for it. The silk of my blouse brushed against my skin as I leaned back in my chair, the morning sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling window, painting the apartment in warm golden tones. Everything looked perfect from the outside, the polished marble counter, the carefully curated books on the shelf, but perfection never tells the whole story.
My phone buzzed again.
A text from my sister, Claire, asking if I was coming home for Thanksgiving. The irony made me laugh softly, a little bitter, a little defiant. Every message, every call, felt like a test. Did I still care enough to let them back into my life, or had I finally drawn the line? I remembered Dad's words the last time I had confronted him about fairness, about respect, about love. He had sneered, "You're wasting your money on people who don't even appreciate it." And yet I had paid. Every cent. Not to buy their approval, but to assert my own worth, my own independence. I took a deep breath, the aroma of my coffee grounding me, and smiled. Today I would see them again, but on my terms. I remember the first time I truly felt invisible in my own family. I was 19, fresh out of college, bright-eyed but naive, sitting at the polished oak dining table while Dad and my stepmom, Linda, dissected my choices like surgeons examining a cadaver. "I just don't understand why you're spending so much," Dad said, his voice calm but cold. "Money doesn't grow on trees, Madison." I bit my lip, trying not to let the lump in my throat turn into tears. I had saved every dollar from my part-time jobs, from late nights tutoring, from small freelance gigs, just to surprise them, to finally show them that I could contribute, that I cared. Linda leaned forward, her eyes sharp, almost gleaming. "And you think throwing money at us is what? Proof of love? You've always been selfish, Madison. Always putting yourself first."
Her words hit me like a slap.
My hands shook on the table, the plate of untouched turkey in front of me blurred. I wanted to scream, to explain, but the words caught in my throat. The sting of being dismissed, of being seen as incapable of love, was unbearable. Grandma's old silver locket came to mind, her gift when I graduated. "Madison, promise me," she had said, pressing it into my palm, "that no matter what they say, you will never let them decide your worth. You are stronger than you know." That evening, after Dad had walked out with a final, dismissive shake of his head, I sat alone in my room, staring at the locket in my hand. My reflection in the mirror looked smaller, but my resolve felt bigger. I would no longer wait for approval that would never come. I would chart my own path, make my own mistakes, and build my own success, quietly, fiercely, on my own terms. By the time the house fell silent, I had made my decision. Independence wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a promise to myself. And I would keep it, no matter the cost. I left that night with nothing but a small suitcase, my grandmother's silver locket, and a heart full of determination. I rented a tiny studio apartment in the city, where the walls were peeling and the floorboards creaked, but it was mine. Every step I took away from their judgment felt like a step toward myself. I didn't have much, but I had ambition. I signed up for freelance gigs, designing small websites and handling marketing for local businesses. Some days I made $20, some days barely enough for ramen and bus fare. Yet, every time I hit send on a client proposal, every time someone praised my work, the weight of their doubts began to lift. It was during one of those late nights, hunched over my laptop, that I met Mr. Harris, a seasoned entrepreneur at a networking event I had almost skipped out of sheer exhaustion. He saw something in me that I didn't fully see in myself yet. "You're sharp, Madison," he said, adjusting his tie. "Don't let anyone else define your limits. If you work hard, you'll get far." His words became a mantra. The road wasn't easy. I endured sleepless nights, self-doubt gnawing at the edges of my resolve, and the constant fear of failing. I faced sexism in boardrooms, being underestimated at every turn, but I kept going. Each small win, A client referring me to another, my first profitable contract, the first check I deposited that felt like real victory, added bricks to the foundation of my independence. And I kept it all secret from them. My social media posts were modest, never hinting at the life I was building. I didn't want their approval. I wanted my own proof. Slowly, Madison Blake, the girl who had once been dismissed as selfish and incapable, became a woman who could command rooms, negotiate deals, and create wealth on her own terms. Years passed. I moved from that tiny studio to a sleek apartment overlooking the skyline, curated my workspace with modern art and carefully chosen books, and finally, quietly, accumulated enough to be truly independent. No more relying on their validation, no more fearing their judgment. My bank balance was healthy, my career thriving, and my self-respect untouchable. Yet, every now and then, I would catch myself staring at Grandma's locket on my desk, smiling. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a reminder that resilience could be nurtured, that independence was a reward worth every sacrifice. Thanksgiving morning arrived like any other, crisp air brushing against my face as I stepped out of my car. But this time, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't trembling. I was Madison Blake, the same girl who had once been dismissed, but now a woman who commanded her own life. I walked into my parents' house, the smell of roasting turkey and cinnamon filling the air, and saw them immediately. Dad, with his stern brow, and Linda, with that same sharp gaze that used to pierce me like a blade. They looked ready to dismiss me, ready to judge me as they always had. But this time, they didn't recognize me. My tailored navy suit, my polished heels, the quiet confidence in my stride, all of it screamed that I had changed. The house, decorated in warm holiday tones, suddenly felt small compared to the aura I brought in. Madison? Dad's voice wavered, disbelief threading through his tone. Yes, I said smoothly, a small, controlled smile playing at my lips. I'm here, and I think it's time we talk. They stared as I guided them through my presence, not with words, but with the environment around me. My iPad displayed client projects I had led. My phone quietly held messages of contracts worth six figures, and I casually mentioned my latest venture, a business I now owned outright. You own this? Linda's voice cracked.
Yes.
Every bit. And the $38,141 I spent last Thanksgiving? That wasn't reckless, I said, letting my tone linger, giving them time to absorb the weight of my words. That was me exercising the independence I earned. That was me showing generosity on my own terms, not to buy your approval. The silence was heavy. Dad's jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw hesitation where there used to be certainty. His pride, his judgment, they had nothing on the truth of my life. I let them look at the details I had curated, the art I had purchased, the awards I had quietly won, the clients who respected me. It wasn't arrogance, it was proof. Proof that the girl they had dismissed, the girl who had cried in her room clutching a silver locket, had risen higher than they ever imagined. And then, the final blow. I placed the bank statement on the table, neatly folded. This is what $38,141 of careful, hard-earned money looks like.
Not a mistake.
A statement. A promise kept to myself. Linda's face went pale. Dad's eyes widened. They had expected weakness, vulnerability, perhaps apologies. Instead, they faced mastery, composure, and undeniable success. I watched as they absorbed it all. The disbelief, the shame, the guilt mingling with amazement. And in that moment, I realized that their perception of me had been shattered. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I had finally given myself the recognition they refused to see. For the first time, I felt no fear. Only clarity. I leaned back in the chair, letting them fully take in the reality of who I had become. The tension in the room was almost tangible, but I felt calm, anchored by years of struggle and the quiet strength I had built. Now, the power had shifted. Here's the thing, I began, my voice steady but firm. I can help. But on my terms. This isn't about money. It's about respect, effort, and honesty, things that were missing in our family for far too long. Dad swallowed, his pride warring with the realization that I was no longer a child to be controlled. Linda's eyes narrowed, defensive at first, but I continued, unflinching. First, I said, looking directly at Dad, you need to acknowledge your past mistakes. Apologies aren't just words, they need to be followed by action. I won't tolerate the same patterns repeating. He nodded slowly, though it was clear that swallowing his ego would take time. Linda, I turned to my stepmom, you have to stop treating generosity as weakness. Family doesn't need to be bought, and control doesn't equal love. I'm offering you a chance to build something real, with me, not against me. I pulled out a small notebook I had kept through the years, filled with plans, goals, and progress reports. Each of you will define one personal goal, something you've always wanted to do, something you've avoided out of fear or laziness. You'll pursue it seriously, and I'll support it, but only if you commit fully. Claire, my sister, looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. Maddie. I shook my head gently, letting her words hang. No shortcuts, Claire. You get to prove yourself through effort, integrity, and consistency. That's how relationships are built. Mutual respect, not entitlement. The room was quiet, everyone processing. I let the silence work its magic. Finally, I added, softer this time, I care about you all, but I won't bend to old patterns. I've spent too long learning my worth to let anyone diminish it again. This is not punishment. This is growth. This is the chance to be better versions of yourselves, and to be part of my life on equal footing. For the first time, I saw real reflection in their eyes. Dad's shoulders relaxed a fraction, Linda's lips pressed into a line of contemplation, and Claire reached out, tentative but hopeful. I smiled inwardly. The power wasn't in money or control, it was in setting boundaries, demanding respect, and offering compassion with conditions. This Thanksgiving, the table had changed. The balance had shifted. I wasn't just the girl who spent $38,141 out of love and independence. I was the woman who had rewritten the rules. The weeks after that Thanksgiving were quiet, but full of change. Dad began volunteering at a local community center, something he had always wanted to do, but never prioritized. Linda took an art class she had long postponed, her sharpness softening with each brushstroke. Claire started her own small business, her determination clear in every late-night phone call she shared with me. And me? I watched, sometimes from a distance, sometimes alongside them, the warmth of cautious reconciliation spreading in small, deliberate steps. I realized that the hardest part wasn't proving my worth, it was learning to forgive without losing myself, to allow growth without sacrificing boundaries. Every evening, I would sit in my office, Grandma's silver locket resting on my desk, and feel the journey replay in my mind. From the 19-year-old girl trembling at the dinner table to the woman who had rewritten the rules of her life, the path had been steep and lonely, but every step had been worth it. I still remembered the sting, the laughter, and the tears. But now, those memories fueled strength instead of resentment. The Thanksgiving table, once a stage for judgment, had become a place for accountability, for love that required effort rather than expectation. I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar weight of the locket against my palm. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a promise kept, a reminder that independence, resilience, and self-respect were the greatest gifts I could give myself. And in that moment, I whispered, half to myself, half to the universe. I choose who I love. I choose who I keep. And I will never let anyone else define my worth again. It was not anger that lingered, it was clarity. Not bitterness, but empowerment. Not revenge, but freedom. Madison Blake had been born from struggle, shaped by resilience, and now lived fully in her truth. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel uncertain. It felt entirely, magnificently mine.